where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian, and with me is Willow.
Hello.
Hello. So we negligently didn't announce this month's theme.
Yes. But it's a new month.
Now I'm going to do
it's
it.
November.
November is one of my favorite months.
Mine too.
It's so pretty and nice and cozy. This isn't a cozy theme. It is children who kill.
Yep.
So the murderers in this case are going to be all children. And what I mean by children is anyone under the age of 18. But I'm usually going, for the cases I've picked, under the age of 16. So these are going to all be rough. I'm just going to tell you that right now. They're going to be riddled with childhood trauma, abuse, all that stuff. And it's very disturbing. So just know that every one of them carries that trigger warning. But for this episode, our trigger warnings are going to be a graphic depiction of a stabbing that was sexual in nature, child abuse, sexual assault, and mental illness. A group of 14-year-old boys were camping in one of their backyards. Because, did you ever do that as a kid?
Of course I did.
Go camping in your own backyard?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this was in the summer of 1992 in Farnborough in the UK in England. Now, it was raining that day because England's summers are typically pretty, humid and wet.
I'm always so jealous of people who live in the UK where it's always raining.
I know, I love the rain. But I'm sure they get sick of it, too.
They say that, but
yeah.
I would switch places in a heartbeat.
I don't know. Maris is from Michigan, and it rained most of the year there, and he said it got really depressing after a while. And I could see that. I need the sunny sunshine sometimes. But, yeah, so they were in this tent, and they thought it was waterproof, and it wasn't, and the rain got in their tents. They're all wet and annoyed, but they love the outdoors, these boys did. So they're like, let's go on a little hike. Let's go on a walk. And so, they went for a walk. The boys decided to walk over to Victoria Road Cemetery, and when they arrived, they were in for a terrible shock. A woman lay partially nude, sprawled on the ground and covered in blood. It was clear she was past saving. She'd been stabbed 32 times. Her body was mutilated. The attack had been vicious. Her genitals, breast, and anus had been stabbed. The woman had even been stabbed after she had died. The boys immediately ran and contacted authorities. The victim was identified as Katie Rackliff. She was an 18-year-old cosmetology student studying to become a hairdresser. She was just starting out in life and was in love with what she was doing. She was really passionate about cosmetology. She'd been going through a hard time lately. She'd just broken up with her boyfriend and was feeling really sad about it, obviously. Katie was a vibrant and social girl. She was pretty with lots of friends. She enjoyed going out clubbing. But after her recent breakup, she just kind of wasn't in the mood for a night of dancing and drinking. But her best friend, Michelle, convinced her to go out to a club called Ragamuffins in Camberley because she was like, come out and have some fun. Forget your troubles. It'll just be the girls. We'll just go dancing. And so reluctantly, Katie went along. And for most of the night, she actually had a really good time. She, maybe got a little too intoxicated. But she was dancing, drinking, feeling herself until she spotted her ex. She left her friend group to go talk to him because it had not been a mutual breakup. I believe that he had broken up with her and she wanted to mend things. And so she goes to talk to him and she's like, hey, I've been thinking about you. I really miss you. And he said, I've moved on. And he had brought a new date with him to the club.
Oh.
So she was just gutted, devastated. Yeah. And she went to her friends and she's like, I'm going home. I don't want to be here. And they're like, well, we're not ready to leave yet. If you just hang out for a little longer. And she got kind of mad and she wandered off. Now her friends thought, when they didn't see her again, that she had left with her ex-boyfriend. They didn't know what had just happened. They had only seen her talking to him. So when they left her there, they didn't know she was outside the club waiting for them. And kind of they left in a rush of people, and it left her to walk home at night by herself. And it's really sad.
It's so heartbreaking. They had no idea.
They had no idea and are completely blameless.
Yeah.
You know. Investigators immediately suspected a male sexual predator as Katie's killer. But right from the jump, they were running into dead ends. The killing looked sexually motivated, considering how Katie had been stabbed in her breasts and vagina and anus. That's pretty terrible. And it fit the profile of a sadomasochistic killer. She had been wearing jewelry, and it had been stolen. And even so, they considered this more someone keeping a memento than somebody, just robbing her. It wasn't valuable enough for robbery to be the motive. And when you see somebody stabbed that many times, it usually speaks to a lot of rage. Mm-hmm. Something personal.
Especially with the postmortem.
Yes, for sure. In addition, Katie was more than 5 miles away from Ragamuffins, that was the name of the club, and in the opposite direction that she would have walked had she been headed home. So it was a real mystery as to why she was located where she was. So investigators believed she had been killed elsewhere and her body dumped in front of the Victoria Road Cemetery. No other theories made much sense. As her case started immediately going cold, the police offered a reward for any information that would lead to the arrest of a suspect. Katie's destroyed family also offered a reward and were constantly on the TV talking about her case, which was featured on the UK's really popular true crime show, Crime Watch. I'm sure you've heard about it in your research. And I've watched a few of them myself.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like they're America's Most Wanted or Unsolved Mysteries almost, except without the UFOs. Still, even with the offer of reward money and the attention the case got in the press and in the media, few workable leads or tips came in. It's like Katie had been killed by a ghost. But the truth was, Katie had been killed by someone unlikely, the least likely sort of suspect. Investigators had created a logical profile of a suspect, but the real killer didn't fit it in the slightest. Investigators first focused on local sex offenders. They interviewed over 400 patrons that had been at Ragamuffins the night Katie was murdered, and still they were coming up empty. All the while, the killer went about their life. The investigators were looking for a man, a sadistic sexual predator, a possible serial killer. But they should have been looking for a 12-year-old girl.
Wow.
Sharon Carr was born in 1979 in Belize and was raised by her mother and stepfather. She never knew her biological father. She was one of 4 children and grew up in extreme poverty in Belize. Sharon and her siblings often went hungry or had to scavenge for food. Her stepfather was a violent alcoholic and abused Sharon's mother, Sharon, and her siblings. But Sharon's mother wasn't any better. She was volatile and abusive. She was known for her wild hair-trigger temper and took her rages out on her children. Sharon would later say that her mother would burn her with cigarettes to punish her. George Carr was a British man stationed in Belize when he first met Sharon's mother. The two of them fell in love and married in 1982. Then George had to return to England when his, tour of duty was over. Sharon and her mother and siblings would follow in 1986, and they settled in Camberley. Remember, Camberley is the town that the nightclub was in. Life was immediately better for Sharon and her siblings. They'd escaped the crushing poverty they'd experienced in Belize, and finally, they were allowed to go to school. At school, Sharon was described by teachers as helpful and sweet. Friends said she enjoyed spending time with older boys and was a very, very social girl. But they did notice that she had a bit of a temper and could sometimes be rather volatile. Despite this, she was often described as a social butterfly who got on well with just about everyone she met. But things weren't great at home. Sharon's mother and her stepfather fought constantly and violently. Not long after moving to Camberley, Sharon's parents would get divorced following a horrific domestic violence incident. Her mother, fighting with her stepfather, poured a pot of boiling fat onto her stepfather, injuring and severely burning both Sharon's mother and her stepfather in the process. Sharon's mother was charged with assault and battery, and she didn't end up spending any prison time. She was kind of like required to undergo mental health treatment. And the thing I like about how England handles a lot of their justice is their punishments aren't as harsh, and they seem to fit the crime a little better than they do in the U.S. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
I mean, there are some serial killers that got off pretty easy, but most of the time they're more focused on the mental health aspects.
Or rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And I really like that. You don't usually see a life sentence in England.
Right.
I'm not saying never.
No, it's very rare, though.
It's very rare. Mm-hmm. And usually, isn't it like you'll be released at Her Majesty's pleasure type of thing? They don't even call it a life sentence, I don't think.
Yeah, I forgot what they call it. But...
People in England, feel free to correct me. And it's not like I haven't looked this up. It's just I can't retain anything these days. Right out my brain it goes. Now, Sharon witnessed this horrible attack. And George Carr, her former stepfather, said she just stood there completely emotionless. It didn't frighten her. She didn't cry. Nothing. It's like it just didn't even faze her. Whether it was from witnessing the violence at home, the trauma of the divorce, or the abuse that she suffered, Sharon's behavior began to change as she got older. She started hanging out with a bad crowd at school and displayed problems with authority. She became quite disruptive in her classes. Sharon started buying and selling drugs at the age of 11.
Oh my God.
She started vandalizing public property with her group of shitty friends and started stealing. And it's kind of typical teenage rebellion behavior, but again, you expect to see somebody 17, 16, or even 15, but not
11.
Not 11 and 12 years old. By age 11, she had issues with drug addiction and was smoking weed every day. Now, y'all, I am very 420 friendly. Not only is it, I think, a good time to smoke a blunt or a bowl, but I also really believe in its powerful medicinal qualities. That being said, your brain ain't done developing until you're 25. I don't think you should be putting drugs in there unless medically
11.
Necessary.
At least at 11, especially at 11.
Now, that being said, there are cases where kids need to be given marijuana because of extreme seizures. There are kids who have hundreds of seizures a day, and that's the only thing that fixes it. Mm-hmm. But that's an extreme measure for an extreme case.
Right.
So, do I think it impeded her development? Yeah. Yes. I think she was self-medicating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sharon also started acting out just for attention. I think it's obvious why. She wasn't getting any sort of positive attention at home. Maybe she was acting out to punish her mother or to get love and attention from her mother. Kids will misbehave.
1,000%.
If positive attention doesn't get them what they want, they will turn to misbehaving.
Yeah.
Just so mama
That's
will
very
pay attention.
natural.
Yeah. That's precisely what Sharon was doing. In addition to all that troubling behavior, Sharon started carrying knives with her everywhere. She was fascinated and obsessed with knives. Then came her interest and fascination with voodoo. And I want to talk about this really quick before we go any further, because of course her being into voodoo, a huge deal of that was made in the press. Voodoo is not, this is also part of the satanic panic, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Voodoo had nothing to do with the killing at all. At all. And it's not really right to demean a culture's practices, religious practices, because we don't understand them. Yes, sometimes animal sacrifice is involved, but not in most voodoo, just in some sects. It's originally from Africa. Sharon and her family are people of color from, Belize, if you want to picture it. Mexico is just north of it, but it's in Central America. But a lot of slaves were brought over to Central America during that time. And of course, they brought their religion with them. Voodoo and hoodoo in particular are from West Africa, and that's where her ancestors came from. So she's just practicing her ancestral beliefs. And I will tell you, I don't think that this made her bad. The press wants to kind of portray her as like some crazed voodoo priestess type. she's 12 years old, and she's just doing what her mama tells her to do.
Right.
They are practicing together. It was something they kind of bonded over. And I'm not going to go any further with the voodoo bit. I'm mentioning it because if you go and Google this case, it's going to pop up time and time again. And I'm just going to put my stance on it, and we're going to leave it alone.
Right.
And move on, because it has nothing to fucking do with this case.
Well, I mean, how many cases have we had where the perpetrator was of Christian faith and that wasn't brought up?
Exactly.
You know?
I just want to we're not going to disrespect other cultures we don't understand.
Exactly.
It's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
For Sharon, voodoo gave her something nothing else could. It gave her control and agency. It made her feel like she had structure because the rituals gave structure. It was something she could do to affect and change her life. In 1990, when Sharon was only 10 or 11, her birth date has never been confirmed, by the way. Some people say she was born in 1982. Some say she was born in 1979. We really don't know how old this girl actually is. Her teacher called social services because of Sharon's out-of-control behavior at school. She was getting into fights, ignoring teachers and administrators. Her home life was really rough, and as a result, Sharon was placed briefly in foster care. She only stayed there about a month, and then she returned home. When she was in secondary school, Molly, Sharon's mother, met and fell in love with another man. He was a laborer and had 2 daughters from a previous relationship. Even if Molly had stabilized and things improved with this new romance, the change was hard on Sharon. For a little while, things seemed to be going well anyway. Sharon's first year in secondary school went really well. Her grades were good. She joined a basketball team. She was getting along with her peers. But this change for the better would be short-lived, because she was still running with a really bad crowd. Her temper was still an issue. On the night of June 7th, 1992, Sharon was out with her friends, roaming the streets and looking for trouble. And that's when she came across Katie Rackliff as she was walking home from the Ragamuffins Club. Now, what I find interesting about this is there's so many differing stories on how this actually went down. Sharon has given like 3 or 4 separate accounts. She has said things like, I offered her a ride home. She has said that, Katie was acting drunk and aggressive towards her, and she has said, I just attacked her. We'll never know. I'm not even sure Sharon knows, if we're going to be honest. Without warning or cause, Sharon attacked Katie with a 6-inch blade she'd been carrying with her. Sharon stabbed her in the ribs, the breasts, the stomach, the vagina, and her anus, 32 times total. Some of the stabs were so hard, they went all the way through Katie's body completely. After she'd killed Katie, Sharon and her friends dragged the young woman's body into a car one of Sharon's acquaintances had and drove Katie out to a dirt road, where they then dragged her body, like out a door, along the ground while the vehicle was moving. And then they dumped her at the Victoria Road Cemetery against a wall like trash. Now, either her clothes had become askew from being dragged on the ground, or Sharon had done that on purpose to make it look sexually motivated. And it was, we'll find out later, kind of sexually motivated. I don't think it was done on purpose. I think it was from her being dragged on the ground. She stole Katie's jewelry and went about her life as though nothing happened. And since investigators were looking for a male sexual predator, Katie's ex-boyfriend was investigated. But then he was cleared. Her friends, riddled with guilt for not taking Katie home, had no helpful leads. Katie was a wonderful, lovely girl with no enemies. Usually we can get mad at the police for shitty detective work, but not in this case. Sharon didn't fit the profile of a cold-blooded sadistic killer. In fact, she made history and didn't even know it. She was England's youngest convicted murderer.
Wow.
Now, it's probable that Sharon would have gotten away with it if she had been able to control her violent impulses and temper. It would be 2 years to the day, and I think it's important that Sharon killed Katie, that she would lash out violently again. She was really obsessed with the murder, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I think it's important that on the 2-year anniversary of Katie's murder, she would commit another violent act. On June 7th, 1994, Sharon went into the bathroom and attacked 13-year-old Anne Marie Clifford, puncturing her lung.
Oh my God.
5 students entered the bathroom, and that stopped the attack. If they hadn't have come in, it's likely Sharon would have killed Anne Marie. Just like with Katie, there was no reason for this attack. Anne Marie had gone into the bathroom to freshen up and wash her hands. As her back was turned, Sharon stabbed her in the back with a 4-inch penknife she carried with her. The attack nearly killed the 13-year-old girl. Sharon ran from the scene when the 5 other students arrived, which stopped the brutal stabbing. Anne Marie was rushed to the hospital. Some sources say that Sharon had actually lured Anne Marie into the bathroom with the express purpose of attacking her. And some sources say she just kind of cornered her in there. These sources claim that Sharon told Anne Marie that she dropped a coin and needed help finding it in the bathroom. Another account, which comes from Anne Marie herself, states that when she went into the bathroom, Sharon knocked her to the ground before stabbing her in the back. Anne Marie said that Sharon was smiling, tossing the knife between her hands before she stabbed her.
God.
It was Anne Marie's screams that alerted the other students. It's the reason they came into the bathroom. Now, that account is from Anne Marie herself. Sharon was arrested as a result of the attack. She was taken to a mental hospital for a psychological evaluation, and immediately she attacked everyone in the room. There were a couple witnesses there, like court reporter type people, and there were 2 staff members. She attempted to strangle to death the staff members. For this attack, Sharon was charged with 2 counts of actual bodily harm, which is a very British thing. These charges were added to the charge she already had in Anne Marie's attack. In December of 1994, Sharon was convicted of all counts and was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Basically, when you have a minor like that, because she's like 14 at this time, they tend to do things like that basically until they're older and they've been rehabilitated, is kind of what that means in her case. At first, she was in psychiatric units, but Sharon just kept attacking other women in particular. She was very violent towards women. And this is from staff to other patients and inmates. Eventually, Sharon was sent to an all-boys ward in the Aycliffe Center. Here, she was less likely to attack the other inmates because she had always preferred the company of boys. I don't know, to me it just really screams a lot of like trauma with her mother.
Yeah.
And I think she hated her mother.
Absolutely.
And I looked it up because there's been a lot of interviews with Sharon over the years to see if she'd ever been, sexually abused by anyone, given the sexual nature of her attacks against other people. And she does act out very sexually, like at a precocious age. But I didn't find anything. So maybe it did and she just doesn't talk about it.
It could have just been like during her life on the street, always turning to drugs and stuff like that. It'll happen.
In 1995, when Sharon was 15 years old, she was sent to Bulwood Hall Young Offenders Institute. It was believed that this place had more resources to handle her violent outbursts and now her even more extreme sexual behavior. And it was never really clarified what that behavior was, so we're just going to leave it at that. In an attempt to control her and protect other inmates from her, staff at the Institute began to monitor all her outgoing and incoming calls to family and friends. The staff at Bulwood also tasked a prison guard with getting close to and befriending Sharon, hoping that she would open up to them. And it's framed in a lot of the reports that they did this to help her. I don't believe that for a fucking minute. I think she was saying sketchy shit in her phone calls. They wanted her to make a friend she'd confess to. And I'm sorry, but I just find that really gross. She's only 15 years old. This person is an adult, and it really just smacks of grooming to me. Because Sharon did eventually develop a crush on this prison guard. And I don't like it. I know why they did it. I just agree with their methods. Because when the phone calls they were like recording, she was bragging to like friends and family about murdering someone else. not just attacking, but she'd murdered someone. And she even said Katie, like, her name a few times. And I think they wanted a full confession out of her, and they used this prison guard as a means to do that. Mm-hmm. I just don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think there are better ways. Then they found her diaries. And what they saw was disturbing. Remember, up until this point, 3 years after the murder of Katie Rackliff, investigators had no leads on the young woman's murder. They were about to get one. She bragged to not only other inmates, but family and friends, but she wrote about it in her diary as, like, really graphically detailing the attack itself. And so I'm going to read some quotes, and they're really bad. Her diaries were found to contain detail of her sexual excitement at the thought of Rackliff's death. She also wrote that she felt jealous of Katie and remarked about the devil and the forces which motivated her. In one entry, she wrote, "If only I could kill you again. I promise I would make you suffer more this time, you fucking slag. Your terrified screams turned me on." And I just, wow. There's something really deeply wrong with this child.
12-year-old.
12-year-old. Now, of course, she's 15 when she's writing this.
Oh, okay. I thought.
But even still, a 15-year-old writing that is very fucked up. I have a 15-year-old. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Of course, the sexual element of the murder had been like looked into, and that's why they picked, a male sadosexual killer. She also wrote, "I swear I was born to be a murderer." And in a letter to a friend, she wrote, "I'm a killer. Killing is my business, and business is good."
My God.
She had also drawn pictures of the knife, and when detectives questioned her about the murder, she immediately confessed and admitted that she had repeatedly stabbed Katie. She graphically described one particular injury and provided details which the police had deliberately withheld, and only the killer would have known that. She also knew that a bracelet had been stolen, which police had not revealed. Sharon helped police film a reenactment of the murder in which she acted out the murder to show what she had done. And when questioned about the attack, all she did was laugh and laugh. Police found that Sharon had a long history of cruelty to animals, including having once decapitated a dog with a small shovel. They concluded she probably had some form of psychopathic disorder, but it took many, many years for her to be diagnosed. Sharon continued to write all of this weird stuff. There was a lot of weird stuff in her diaries and graphic depictions of the murder, even after being questioned by the police. And in January of 1996, she gave another series of confessions to prison officers that she had a crush on. She would develop crushes on officers and guards and things like that. On the 4-year anniversary of the murder, on June 7th, 1996, she wrote in her diary, "Respect to Katie Rackliff, 4 years ago today." And I just find that a weird tone change. You know what I mean?
Respect.
I don't...
Yeah, it sounds...
I read the other entries and I don't see any respect towards Katie or remorse or anything.
Yeah, it sounds facetious.
It does. And I have read... this is the mildest of the quotes from the diary, just so y'all know.
Yeah, I don't want to read the diary.
I will be posting the pictures of the diary pages up on Patreon on a public post, but please, please be aware. I will nest them further in the pick case photos. Please be aware. They are very graphic and very, very, very disturbing. Sharon confessed to multiple occasions throughout her whole life of animal cruelty, which started when she was very young. So this leads us back to the question, is it nature? Is it nurture? And just like in most of our cases, I really feel like it's both. I feel like there's something definitely really wrong and disturbed about Sharon that probably would be there regardless of what kind of home life she had. But you couple that with all the violence she witnessed at a young age, and I just think it was just a recipe for disaster. Yeah, I think on this one, for sure. All I know is that she was failed by the schools. She was failed by the government. She was failed by her parents. Because when they sent her to foster care, she should have never been returned to that home where she was abused. Ever. Ever. Why? I don't understand. It's like you want bad things to happen. It should have never gotten as far as it did. Her trial was a media shitstorm. The papers called her the devil's daughter. They called a profoundly disturbed and mentally ill child that. Yes, she committed a heinous act and is definitely a danger to others and herself, but she was still a child. Yes, she should be held accountable for her actions, unless, of course, she isn't able to control herself, which I kind of suspect. These rages seem to come out of nowhere. Like, no one did anything to her to make her act that way.
Right.
And that tells me I'm not sure that she should be held responsible. And that's not to say that she should be set free. Absolutely not. I think she'll kill people if she's set free.
Absolutely.
I think she needs to be in psychiatric care until the end of her days. But to call her, like, to bring up the voodoo, which has absolutely nothing to do with this case, to call her the devil's daughter, it just seems really gross. She's also a person of color. And yes, she is England's youngest convicted killer, meaning that she was 12 years old at the time she committed the act she was convicted for in court. But Mary Bell was 11. Was 11 years old. The difference is that she was convicted of manslaughter. Why did Mary Bell get a different treatment than Sharon? Mary was just as psychotic and just as violent. She killed a baby. She killed a 3-year-old little boy and then killed, I think the other one was like 2. And she was clearly a serial killer in the making. Couldn't control her impulses. She also had a rough childhood. I don't know. I hate pulling the race card, but this time I'm going to pull it.
They're trying to sell newspapers.
Yeah. I just think calling a person of color the devil's daughter, a mentally ill child, is disgusting. This shouldn't have gone to trial this way. She just needed to be removed from society and placed in care. And, you know, you can disagree all day, but what are we just going to start lining children up and shooting them? I mean, I don't know. I get that she didn't meet the legal criteria for not guilty by reason of insanity. And the thing is, she is guilty, but I just don't know her mental state at the time, if she was able to control herself or even understand her actions, given her later diagnosis too. In October 21st of 2003, Sharon and her lawyers challenged her conviction for murder. Sharon became the UK's youngest ever female murderer when she was convicted in 1997. And police had found that she's probably, she had some kind of psychopathic disorder. Although her mental illness could not be pinpointed at the time, all agreed that she was very dangerous. But it emerged during the challenge against her case, which she should have been put up for parole after 14 years. That's what she was sentenced to. But it was like 14 years to life. Like, she has to be paroled in order to be released, and she wasn't eligible for parole until 14 years. They said no, and you're going to stay in there probably forever. She's been repeatedly denied parole, and I do agree with that. I do not think she should be released. And her lawyers wanted her murder conviction replaced with manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. I absolutely agree with that. I do think she had diminished responsibility, not only due to, number one, her age, but number two, her mental state. She is later diagnosed with a schizoaffective disorder and possibly schizophrenia. And it went unmedicated and untreated, and she clearly was in psychosis. I don't know what else to call those unprovoked attacks. England and Wales top judge, the Lord Chief Justice Lord Wolfe, sitting at the Royal Courts of Justice, said Sharon wants her murder conviction replaced with one of manslaughter, and he said her lawyers also wish to highlight that Sharon's confession to the murder may now be in doubt, and that the papers submitted to the trial judge, upon which he based his assessment of her psychiatric condition, were edited by the prison service. And you know what? That may be true. I mean, there's no way to know unless this actually goes to court, but all of this was struck down and her conviction was upheld along with her sentence. He would not diminish the time, he would not, concede to her having parole. He wouldn't get the conviction overturned to manslaughter because of diminished capacity. He upheld that her confession was obtained lawfully, and I just kind of am dubious on some of those points. And that's not to say I think she should be freed, but I think it's important that we dot our I's and cross our T's. And because there could be other people come along that could be rehabilitated, but won't be because judges won't overturn things. That's why they need proper designations. Also, and this is just really fucking makes me angry, is that her accomplices, she did not do this alone. Did she carry out the attack alone? I think so. But her friends helped her. She didn't have a car. She was 12.
Yep.
Those people were never identified and never charged with a crime, even though they were accessories to murder. They're still roaming free. Yeah.
What the fuck?
So you tell me, this whole thing is kind of stinky to me.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't like it. Sharon remains the youngest person to have ever been convicted, and she's 42 years old now. Despite being in prison all these years, she's been reported to regularly attack other inmates and staff, at least once a month.
Wow.
She's frequently in solitary confinement as a result. In 2020, she requested to have her prisoner status changed so that she would no longer be put in solitary. This was denied. And when it was denied, it was discovered that she had been plotting the murder of another inmate. What she had wanted to do was smash her head in and throw her down the stairs. Wow. It's safe to say that she is a very disturbed woman who actively poses a risk to those around her. Like I said, she was later diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and as of 2015 was remanded back to regular prison because of how dangerous she is. She had been put in psychiatric care. It's just back and forth. She's being ping-ponged back and forth. I don't think that either England, the U.S., or any place in the world that I know of has facilities for the criminally insane that are good.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have enough resources. They're chronically underfunded. Our prisons in the U.S. are now for profit. And I don't know how they are in England, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I think that's a big part of the issue is when you privatize prisons, people don't have resources then. It just sucks. Sharon almost married a fellow inmate, Robbie Lane, who was 24, when he was convicted of killing his mother and gouging out her eye.
Jesus.
Right before they were about to go to the chapel and get married, they both sat down and read a news article that was written about them getting married. And when they read about each other's crimes, they were both so disgusted that the marriage didn't go forward.
What the fuck?
It's like pot calling kettle black.
I was just
there.
about to say that. Yeah.
Girl, you don't have no room to judge.
I thought it would be the opposite.
I thought they'd be like, oh, good job.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
No, and I'm just adding that in there because the whole thing's unhinged. You don't need to be getting married in prison.
Yeah.
And I just think you're not free. Why? Don't stop. No. Though she has served her 14-year sentence, she is still not eligible for parole, and she will never be. She will die there. And I will share all of this, all the pictures and the diary pages, of which almost all of them have been released to the public. There are quite a few, and they're all pretty freaking terrible. But I will post these. Just know that you're going to have to scroll past a couple warning signs, because I don't want anyone to accidentally click it if they're not emotionally prepared to look at it. Mm-hmm. This month is going to be real rough, y'all. It's going to be rough. This case really surprised me in many ways, because normally with child killers, you find that the victim is another child. I mean, it wasn't Mary Bell's case.
Right.
And although Katie was only 18, still significantly older. Mm-hmm. You don't usually see kids, they'll pick on kids younger than them, or their same age. You'll see a lot of teenage girls, unfortunately murder each other. How many cases have we covered where that was the case?
Absolutely. Because they're your peers. Especially when you're young, you don't think about adults very much.
Or if you do, they're just sort of mysterious and intimidating.
They're just there. You don't get them.
No. And so that's what makes this case so unusual, and that it was sexually motivated too.
Yeah.
And you especially see that in the diary entries. She wanted to... Gosh, she was jealous of her. Like, she wanted to be her. She wanted to be with her. It was very, very upsetting to read. I'm surprised I'd never heard of this case.
I've never heard of this case, no.
And I doubt many of our American listeners have heard of it either. And I guess in that way, I'm glad I can share it because I think it's important. Again, it just shows what happens when people with dangerous mental health conditions just fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And
then have children who also have mental health issues.
And then the cycle of abuse continues and it never ends. And if we had maybe cared for Sharon properly, got her out of her very toxic and abusive household and, diagnosed her and helped her, then maybe Katie would still be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what my main concern is like, it's not just because a lot of people think I'm too soft on killers. No, I'm not. I don't think she should ever be released. I think she should be hospitalized. I think if they had gotten to her earlier, she would still be hospitalized. I don't think there's any medicine in the world or therapy in the world that can fix with whatever's wrong with Sharon Carr. But now it's business time. I didn't even want to do a transition.
Yeah.
This is just the transition you get, which is none at all. So, yeah, hey, our Patreon exists. We put out an extra episode every week. We have other features. You just want to go check it out. We have public posts. You can always see our case photos public. We don't own the pictures. It'd be weird to make money off of them. So please go check those out. And I will put in court documents whenever I can. Those are not always available to the public. And sometimes they're not in a form that's readily easy to put up on the internet. But every once in a while we run into a few. And so if you want to check those out, head over to our Patreon. All of our links for things like Patreon, our Discord, our merch, all of that. My soap website is in our link tree. And that's in the description. You'll see Linktree /cruelty. Click on it. Don't be scared. It just lets you look at all the other stuff we do and the stuff we do related to the podcast. And, that's how you can send us nice messages if you want to, which we always appreciate. Or if you want to support us on Ko-fi. Maybe you don't want a recurring, subscription, with Patreon, but you do want to send us a little love. Ko-fi's a good place to do it. All of our payment apps are available too. Willow still could use y'all's help. She's getting there. She's making some progress. Things are starting to go a little better now.
Court sucks.
Yep. And, she just got a job, but you guys know it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get your first paycheck. So, hey, let's meet Willow in the middle since she's standing there waiting for us. Let's see if we can help out.
That's very sweet.
Well, you try.
I do try very hard.
Yes. And it's really hard to kind of have to start over.
It is very difficult, yes.
I've done it and I didn't have any help and it was a bad time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if you can help, as always, don't ever put yourself out. We don't want that. Yeah. Last thing, my soap's on sale.
Hell yeah.
40% off if you use the code SOAP, all caps, one word. Soap. That'll get you 40% off Halloween mystery boxes, and I only literally have I think 2 or 3 of those left. Some soaps are sold out, but I still have lots of others. Get you some soap. Hey, I know Halloween's over, so soap still looks cool. Mm-hmm. It still looks cool. Yeah, and not all of it's orange and pumpkins. Most of it's black and purple because I'm basic as fuck. So head on over there, get you some soap. If you have a product you want me to make, I promise you I make it. So just message me, if you want lotion, perfume. I do all that stuff. I don't always have time to get all that up on my website. And we're preparing for Christmas, and wintertime, Hanukkah, whatever, holidays. So there's a lot I'm doing. But if you want a specific product like a bath bomb or a perfume oil or lotion, stuff like that, you can message me and I'll fix you up something real nice just for you. Other than that, if all you can do to listen, if all you can do
to listen is support this podcast,
then if all you can do to support this podcast is listen, please know that I do not take that lightly and appreciate it greatly, and it's for you. If you weren't listening, I wouldn't fucking do it. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work.
Yep.
But hey, we love hearing from you guys. Just heard from a fan from Denmark today. How cool is that?
That's really cool.
Is that not fucking cool?
Yeah.
I love hearing from you guys. So please join the Discord. Show me pictures of your pets, your puppy dogs, your cats, your lizards, your snakes, your bugs, whatever. Show me what you made for dinner even. I want it all. I want to see it. So come and join in the fun on Discord. We got a really fun group of nice people there. It's a wonderful place. Like if you're having a bad day, it'll cheer you up. It'll cheer you up. All right, but other than that, I'm done.
Good night.
Good night. Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/cruelty has all of the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.